After months of backlash over the casting, the costume designs, and one of the most controversial trailers of the year, Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey is finally here. I went into this film expecting a spectacle. What I didn't expect was how real it would feel. Not realistic in the sense that gods and monsters suddenly become believable, but realistic enough that for nearly 3 hours, I completely forgot I was watching a myth written almost 3000 years ago. Hi, I am Shivang, and this is How do you make a myth feel real? That's the question that stayed with me after the credits roll. Most fantasy films try to convince you their world exists through scale. Bigger castles, bigger armies, bigger visual effects. Nolan does something different. His Greece doesn't feel impressive because it's enormous. It feels impressive because it feels lived in. The dogs, the streets, the palaces, nothing feels like a movie set waiting for actors to arrive. It feels like people have lived there for generations before the camera ever showed up, and that's a huge difference. The film doesn't even open with Odysseus. It opens with a man standing on a table in a banquet hall, telling a story, a bard played by Travis Scott, who also wrote and performed the closing credits music. The story he's telling isn't actually the Odyssey. The Odyssey is the film happening around him. That's such a smart way to open a movie about storytelling itself. How the stories we tell can deceive us and free us in the same breath, comfort us and disturb us, pull people apart and hold them together. We are not even starting at the beginning. We are already past the halfway point, close to the bloodbath at the end, and the film just trusts you to catch up. Nolan built this off Emily Wilson's 2017 translation of the Odyssey, the first time a woman had ever translated the poem into English. Known for how direct and unadorned it reads compared to older, more flowery translations. That actually explains something I felt but couldn't name going in. Why this journey plays like something that could have really happened to a real man and not like a myth being performed at you. Some of the best looking scenes in the film happens at night. The Trojan horse sequence immediately grabbed me. The choreography, the tension, the limited visibility, it feels chaotic without ever becoming confusing. But the scene that completely surprised me was the Cyclops encounter. Inside that cave, the only real light comes from a burning fire. The Cyclops isn't constantly shown in full. Instead, Nolan lets darkness do most of the work. For a few minutes, this epic adventure suddenly feels like a horror film. And honestly, I would love to see Christopher Nolan direct a full horror movie someday because these scenes prove he understands that fear comes from what you can't see just as much as what you can.
I've always been interested in world, but I think I mean the thing with horror is you have to have just the right concept. You have to have an amazing conceptual basis for a horror movie to really work.
Yeah.
And that's something I've never really connected with or haven't found the right thing. What's interesting about horror is it's the most visceral of film genres, and so it's the one that requires the most cinematic technique, the very direct effect that you're trying to have on it.
And when they are on ship, there's only two sources of light. One is the moonlight and other is the lamps. And when there's no moonlight, there is lightning. And it made those scenes really scary and intense. One thing I loved is that Nolan never treats mythology like spectacle for its own sake. Everything feels grounded. The locations feel physical, the ships feel heavy, the storms feel dangerous. Even the impossible moments are presented with such sincerity that you stop questioning whether they are real. You are too busy following Odysseus. That's probably Nolan's greatest achievement here. He never asks you to believe in monsters, he asks you to believe in the people facing them. Christopher Nolan has never really been interested in telling stories in a straight line, and the Odyssey continues that tradition. The structure is unmistakably Nolan, but unlike some of his earlier films, I never found it difficult to follow because every jump in time stays emotionally connected to Odysseus. We are discovering his journey the way myths are often remembered, not as a timeline, as memories, stories, fragments. That structure makes the journey feel even more personal. For me, this is where the movie truly succeeds. Odysseus isn't remembered because he defeats monsters, he is remembered because he survives them. Throughout the film, he is confident, sometimes arrogant. He believes he can challenge the gods themselves, and slowly that confidence is stripped away. Every island changes him, every loss costs him something. By the time he reaches home, he isn't simply completing an adventure, he has become a different man. Without that emotional journey, none of the spectacle would matter. I noticed something interesting about the score. Unlike Oppenheimer, where Ludwig Göransson's music often demands your attention, here it feels quieter, less interested in announcing itself. Instead, it flows with the story. I don't remember leaving the theater humming a theme. I remember how the music made certain moments feel, and I think that's exactly what this film needed. Watching the Odyssey, I realized this isn't actually Christopher Nolan trying something completely new. He's been doing this his entire career. In Batman Begins and The Dark Knight, he grounded superheroes. In The Prestige, he grounded magic. In Inception, he grounded dreams. In Interstellar, he grounded science fiction. And now he's grounding mythology. He's taking one of humanity's oldest stories and treating it like it happened to real people. Not because he wants to remove the fantasy, because making it feel believable makes the emotions hit harder. Before release, most conversations about the Odyssey were about casting choices. Honestly, about 10 minutes into the movie, I completely forgot about all of that. The performance, the storytelling, and the journey became far more important than the internet discourse surrounding them. For me, this is one of Christopher Nolan's finest films. Not because it's his most expensive, but because it's one of his most human. It's an epic, yes, but beneath all the gods, monsters, storms, and battles, it's simply the story of a man trying to get home. And that's probably why the Odyssey has survived for thousands of years. Because great myths aren't remembered for their monsters, they are remembered for the people who face them.